Kodiak 3, we're out of ammo. Is anyone out there? The plea tore through a jungle night with no moon. No mercy. Fog smothered the valley. A circle of enemy fire drew tighter with every heartbeat. 40 minutes from reinforcements, 18 from collapse. Then across the ridge, a calm female voice answered. Not on the roster. Not supposed to fight. Yet in her silence lay a rifle, a past buried deep, and the decision to act when no one else could. Before we begin, tell us, where are you watching from? And if you believe honor and courage still matter, help keep their legacy alive. The jungle was drowning in black. No moon, only mist crawling through the ridgeline of Guam. Breathing. Static. And gunfire cracked the silence like glass under pressure. Kodiak. 3 ammo almost gone. Does anyone copy? The voice on the radio was raw, gasping, pressed tight against death. In the valley, a circle was closing in. For a heartbeat, there was only static. Then, calm and low, a woman's voice. Copy. Hold position. I'll handle the rest. A promise spoken with no hesitation, though an entire SEAL unit was cornered. Her name was Avery Locke, 33 years old. A frame compact and steady. Eyes dark and unreadable. She had been called a master sniper once, but those days were buried under 3 years of technical duty. In the forward base at Apra Harbor, Avery's name was not on any combat roster. She existed in the margins, tucked behind the green glow of comm screens. Officially, she was there to monitor signals. Unofficially, she was invisible. The younger SEALs knew her reputation only as rumor. In whispers, they dismissed it. She used to be good with long-range stuff. Now she just fixes radios. That rifle in storage weighs more than she does. Avery never corrected them. She polished a scope that hadn't seen daylight in years. A relic of another life, kept clean out of habit. The insult didn't cut as deep as the silence that followed it. Silence from commanders, from assignments, from trust. The word used in briefings was reliable. She could be counted on to sit at a desk, track chatter, pass coordinates. Reliable meant safe, but never essential. It meant the war could turn without her finger on the trigger. But tonight, safe wasn't an option. Through the comms, Kodiak 3 was collapsing. Gunfire rose in the background of every transmission, tighter each minute. The ETA for ground support blinked red 46 minutes. Too far. Too late. Lieutenant Commander Dana Keating's voice was steady, but there was strain beneath it. Air cover negative. Storm ceiling locked. Hold what you can. It was a death sentence disguised as an order. Avery closed her eyes. The maps burned behind her eyelids. 3 enemy units pressing from north, east, west. No space left but the cliff drop. She had seen this equation before, different terrain, same math. Ammunition versus time versus distance. Her pulse quickened, but not with panic. It was recognition. The same cold taste she'd swallowed years earlier, on another ridgeline half a world away. She opened her eyes, and the decision was already made. The weapons locker waited in the corner of the tent, sealed, coded, never meant for her hands. Avery slid her access card. The lock chimed softly, like a secret whispering yes. Inside lay her rifle. An M200 intervention she had once carried across continents. 3 magazines marked in her script. Every surface clean, every piece perfect. It had slept, but never decayed. Her hand brushed the cold steel. 3 years since she'd last fired in anger. 3 years of silence. A voice from memory came back, Colonel Vance at sniper school. The weapon doesn't decide. The shooter does. And the hardest part is acting when everyone else waits. She packed fast. Rifle, rangefinder, NV scope, 3 loaded mags. A pouch of medical supplies she prayed she wouldn't need. Each piece found its place without hesitation. Muscle memory moving faster than thought. The timer on the screen ticked down 45:12. Kodiak 3 had 18 minutes before the line broke. Air support 46 minutes away. No overlap, no rescue. Avery stepped outside. The camp's lights faded behind her, replaced by jungle shadows. The night air clung wet against her face. She adjusted her strap, rolled her shoulders once, and moved into the tree line. Branches clawed at her pack. Vines tangled her boots. Every step made the ground shift with wet stones. She slowed her breathing, tuned to the rhythm of the forest. The radio hissed. Then, dead silence. A full blackout of signal. For 40 seconds, she was deaf to Kodiak, 3 cut off from their dying voices. She froze, knelt in the mud, and listened. From the east, gunfire echoed sharp. From the west, muffled bursts answered. The sound ricocheted off the ridge and told her what the map couldn't. The enemy was tightening. Her compass swung in her palm. She adjusted course, veering toward the Pago Bay ridgeline, the only high ground with sightlines over the valley. It would cost her blood and breath to get there. But from that perch, she could see them all. She moved faster now, knees brushing ferns slick with mist. Her boots slipped once on a stone. She caught herself with her palm, mud streaking her skin. The forest fought her with every meter, but she didn't fight back. She adapted. She always had. Somewhere ahead, above the canopy, a ridge face rose near vertical. If she could climb, she would reach the outcropping that overlooked the SEAL team's encirclement. Without it, she was blind. With it, she was lethal. The radio flickered back alive. Kodiak, 3 to base. Last mags. Casualties mounting. If we don't move now, we're done. A burst of automatic fire bled into the transmission. Avery glanced up at the ridge. Her pulse slowed deliberately. The decision was already sealed the moment she opened that locker. Tonight. She wasn't a technician. She wasn't reliable. She was the last line no one had asked for. She shifted her rifle across her back, dug fingers into the stone, and began to climb. The cliff rose like a black wall. Wet stone gleamed under faint starlight, slick with moss. Avery pressed her palms against the surface, found a ledge barely wide enough for 2 fingers, and pulled. Her boots scraped. A rock shifted free and tumbled into the mist below. She froze, chest pressed to granite, listening. Far beneath, faint shouts in a language not hers drifted upward. She exhaled slow, reached higher, another ledge, another hold. Muscles burned, but she moved steady, methodical, the way she had been trained. Every pull was survival. Every step was seconds stolen from death. Halfway up, her harness carabiner nudged the stone. Metal chimed sharp. A tiny echo. She stopped breathing. A flashlight beam flickered somewhere in the undergrowth below. Then silence returned. She climbed faster. Sweat cut through the dirt on her cheek. At the top, her fingers gripped an edge of rock and pulled herself onto the outcropping. She lay flat, chest heaving, staring down at the valley floor. The view snapped everything into clarity. Kodiak, 3 huddled in a rough circle. Tracers cut through the mist around them, red lines slicing air. 3 separate streams of fire closed in from different flanks, squeezing tighter with every burst. Avery slid her pack open, rifle out, scope locked. She flattened against the stone, barrel pointing toward the storm below. Her pulse slowed as if her body already knew what came next. The air thickened. Then the mist shifted, just for a heartbeat. A gap opened in the fog, a window of 7 seconds, enough to see, enough to strike. Her first target came into view, an enemy commander standing tall, shouting orders, waving his arm to drive the assault forward. But in the corner of her eye, a civilian shape staggered across the same path. A villager, shoulders bent under a crate of ammunition, pushed ahead by a rifle barrel at his back. Avery held her breath. She couldn't take the shot with the villager in the frame. She waited, every second of that window evaporating. The civilian stumbled clear just as the fog began to close again. She fired. The commander dropped. The crate tumbled into the mud. The villager ran, and as the mist sealed shut, Avery's brass casing clinked against stone. Kodiak, 3 east pressure breaking. A voice shouted through static. Relief laced the words, but the fight was far from done. Avery racked the bolt, chambered again. Her scope tracked across the valley. A belt-fed machine gun rattled, its muzzle lighting up the fog like a strobe. Every burst hammered the SEALs back into cover, pinning them where they stood. She studied the rhythm. 6 seconds of fire, 2 seconds pause. A reload every third burst. Predictable, deadly. She adjusted her aim, crosshairs hovering where the gunner would stand tall to change belts. 1 cycle. 2 cycles. She counted with her own breath. On the third pause, the figure lifted. She squeezed. The gunner slammed backward. The weapon clattered silent into the mud. The strobe died. Kodiak, 3 moving west. We've got breathing room. Static burst with urgency, but this time it carried hope. Her eyes swept left again. Another figure stood above the fray, headset glowing faint in the dark, barking into a radio. A field coordinator, holding the enemy formation together. Without him, chaos would spread. The mist began to part again, a brief slit of clarity cutting across the valley. She didn't wait for perfect. She fired on the 6th second, just before the fog rolled back. The shot snapped through the gap. The coordinator fell, his headset sparking against the ground. The enemy lines hesitated, broken without their anchor. For the first time, the circle around Kodiak 3 faltered. A seam opened in the west flank. It wasn't wide, but it was enough for escape. Avery exhaled, breath fogging against the stone. Her rifle lay steady, still aligned, still hungry. But she knew she had tipped the scale, not won the war, but given the SEALs one last chance. On the radio, a strained voice called out, "Unknown sniper, identify who is providing overwatch." She pressed her transmitter once. "Maintain position. Don't spread out. I'll cover the ridge." Her voice stayed even, no name offered, no signature given. She returned her eye to the scope. Movement flickered in the edges of the fog, enemy squads trying to realign, desperate to close the gap she had torn. They would regroup, unless she kept them off balance. Her finger rested against the trigger guard. She listened to the wind, the faint drip of water sliding off leaves. The battle wasn't over. It had only just shifted. Brass casings gleamed in the dirt beside her elbow. 3 lined side by side, unplanned yet perfect. They marked the line between collapse and survival. Avery reset her breathing, steady as stone. Through the glass, the war was hers to direct. One decision at a time, one pull at a time. She blinked, slow, calm. The rifle felt alive again, and the valley below held its breath. The valley quieted for only a breath. Then a crack split the night, sharper than the rest. Stone exploded inches from Avery's cheek, spraying grit across her face. Her ears rang. A hot sting tore across the rim of her helmet. The round had missed by less than an inch. She pressed tighter into the rock, heart slowing by force. Another sniper was out there, patient, watching the same fog windows she used. Through the scope, she searched for the origin. Nothing, only shadows of branches swaying in mist. Whoever he was, he knew how to hide. A second shot came, wider, chipping stone at her flank. Testing, measuring. He wanted her pinned, hesitant, afraid to lift her head. Avery shifted left, inching into a shallow hollow. The rifle settled. Her hand tapped once against the stock, a rhythm to find her calm. She waited for her own heartbeats to slow. 1, 2, 3. The mist thinned again, revealing a ridge far across the valley. For half a second, a faint shimmer light bending off a scope. She fired. The report cracked flat, swallowed by the fog. Silence followed, then a distant clatter, like metal striking rock. No third shot came. The ringing in her ear dulled, leaving only her breath and the echo of her pulse. The duel was over. She had won by seconds, but danger climbed closer. To her right, faint movement in the brush. 2 figures were advancing, moving with trained caution, leapfrogging cover. They had traced her general position. She set the rifle down gently, barrel flat against the stone. Her hand found the knife on her harness. The jungle grew louder in her ears, dripping leaves. Insect buzz, the faint crunch of boots. The first man crested the rock, eyes locked on the spot where she had fired. He never saw her shift from the shadows. One quick step, one silent strike, and his body slumped without a sound. Avery pulled him deeper into the brush, lowering him softly, not letting his gear clatter. Blood soaked into the soil. She turned back to the path. The second man appeared moments later, crouched, weapon raised. He froze when he noticed the space empty of his partner. Suspicion flickered in his stance. Avery had already moved. She came from his blind side, low and fast. His reflex was sharp, but hers sharper. A twist, a strike, and he fell into silence beside the first. She wiped the blade once against her pant leg. The jungle swallowed the moment. No trace left but the weight in her chest. She crawled back to her rifle. Through the scope, the valley still boiled with muzzle flashes. Kodiak 3 had begun edging west, toward the gap her shots had torn open. But the enemy was regrouping, pushing to close it again. She pressed the transmitter. Kodiak, 3 west path clear for 90 seconds. Move now. Copy moving. The voice was tight, but alive. Boots splashed in mud below as the team surged toward the break. Avery scanned again, tracking the pursuit. Enemy fighters pushed hard from the north, desperate to collapse the gap. If they reached it before the seals slipped through, the circle would snap shut again. She lined her crosshairs on the leading man. Fired. He spun into the dirt, momentum broken. 2 more dropped as she worked the bolt with practiced calm. Still, the pressure didn't stop. The fog thickened again, blinding her for long seconds at a time. She timed each shot to the 7-second windows, cutting down runners, sowing hesitation. On the radio, Keating's voice rang. Unknown sniper Kodiak, 3 halfway through the pass. Hold them, Avery whispered to herself. A breath against the stock. I'm here. Then she fired again. The valley echoed with scattered shouts. Confusion spread. Some enemy squads broke left, others right. The rhythm of their assault fractured, pieces unraveling. At the far edge of her scope, she saw Kodiak 3 sliding into the tree line, silhouettes disappearing into safer ground. Their window had held. The timer in her head ticked down, Chivien still 30 minutes away. But the team was alive. They would reach the extraction point before the circle could close again. Avery let out a breath she hadn't realized she'd been holding. The rifle cooled against the stone. Around her, the night went quiet, save for a few scattered gunshots fading into distance. She keyed her radio once more. Kodiak 3 area secure. Continue west. I'll cover until you're clear. There was a pause. Then, outstanding work. Can you identify the line cut as Avery switched channels, leaving the question unanswered? She looked down at the ground beside her. 2 bodies lay still in the brush, hidden under leaves. 3 brass casings lined in a neat row at her elbow. Proof only for her eyes. The battle was not fully over, but the crisis had passed. She had bought them life with minutes, with bullets, with silence. Avery lifted her head. The fog closed again, swallowing the valley whole. The jungle returned to its indifferent hum, as if nothing had happened. She packed her rifle, slid the casings into her pouch, and prepared to vanish back the way she came. Kodiak 3 had their window. Her job was done for now. The night did not loosen its grip. Fog curled thick against the ridge. Avery slid her rifle across her back, pressed low, and began the descent. Every step was a gamble. Rocks shifted under her weight, and roots clawed at her boots. Below, the enemy swept with flashlights, beams cutting the mist like blades. She paused behind a trunk. One light swung past her helmet, so close the edge of her cheek glowed faint white. A bead of sweat ran down, dropped to the ground, and vanished in the mud. The patrol moved on. Their voices faded into the hiss of insects. Avery exhaled slow and pushed deeper into the brush. The jungle fought her at every turn. Branches tore at her sleeves. Vines wrapped her ankles. She kept moving, each breath measured, every movement precise. At a clearing, she dropped flat, listening. The enemy team had turned back up the ridge. They would find brass and blood, but not her. She angled west, away from Kodiak 3's path. Her boots sank into sodden ground, water rising cold against her shins. Each step made a muffled splash she couldn't silence. Another patrol loomed ahead. She slid beneath a low root, pressing her body flat against wet soil. The beam of a flashlight lingered above, searching. A mosquito whined in her ear. She clenched her jaw, unmoving. When the beam finally passed, she rolled free and slipped into shadow. By the time she reached the base perimeter, the sky was turning pale. She timed her return with the shift change. Guards too tired to question her approach. Inside her tent, she cleaned the rifle with steady hands, every component wiped free of mist and grit. The weapon looked untouched, as if it had never left the locker. She set 3 empty casings on the desk, lined them perfectly, then swept them into a pouch, no evidence left behind. Morning carried the weight of routine. Screens hummed, antennas rotated. Avery returned to her station, headphones on, reviewing comm logs as though nothing had happened. The tent flap shifted. Lieutenant Commander Dana Keating stepped inside. Her uniform carried the dust of the jungle, her eyes the sharpness of someone who had walked the edge of death. "Lock," she said. Her voice was quiet, but each syllable carried weight. Avery looked up. "Ma'am, need something checked on the logs." Keating studied her for a long moment. Then she set a single brass casing on the desk, the one Kodiak 3 had found on the ridge. "Some actions don't make it into paperwork," Keating said, her eyes softened. "But they don't go unnoticed." Avery kept her expression even. "I'll review equipment access if you'd like, ma'am. That won't be necessary." Keating's voice thinned into something almost like gratitude. "Whoever was out there bought us time. That kind of judgment can't be trained. It has to be carried." She tapped the casing once with her finger. "I'm recommending you for combat recertification. It's not a request, it's recognition." Avery's chest tightened, but she gave no outward sign. "Understood." Keating offered the faintest smile. "Sometimes the best way to disappear is to stand where everyone can see you." Then she turned and left, leaving the casing on the desk. The screen in front of Avery blinked. A new message, Combat Recertification Review Priority. She read it twice, then deleted the notification. Her eyes drifted to the casing. She dropped it into her pouch with the other 3. Days passed. Her name began to appear on rosters again, slid quietly into assignments. No ceremony, no speeches, just presence. The younger SEALs noticed. Where once there had been smirks, there were nods. Not overt, but steady, respectful. One evening at the range, Sergeant Miles Ortega approached her, the same man who had doubted her strength. He stood awkward, rifle across his chest. "Ma'am, I owe you an apology," he said. "I made assumptions I shouldn't have." Avery cleaned the scope of her rifle, her tone flat but not cold. "Assumptions are easy. Context is harder." Ortega nodded, swallowing. "I'll remember that." Then he walked away. The respect was quiet, but it was there. As the sun dipped, another figure lingered near the firing line. Evan Pike, the youngest of Kodiak, 3 helmet tucked under his arm. He hesitated, then stepped closer. "Ma'am, that night, whoever it was, thank you." His voice carried the weight of someone who had almost died and knew it. Avery met his eyes. For a moment she saw her younger self in his face, the eagerness, the doubt, the hunger to prove. "Tomorrow," she said. 0600. "You'll stand behind me and learn how to keep silent." That's the first lesson. Evan's expression flickered from confusion to understanding. He nodded sharply, as if receiving an order. "Behind him!" Ortega watched from a distance. He said nothing, but his shoulders eased, the skepticism gone. Avery turned back to the range. She lifted her rifle, sighted on a fading target downfield, and exhaled. The weapon felt alive again. Not because of its steel, but because she had chosen to use it. The shot cracked. The target dropped. Evening swallowed the sound. She lowered the rifle and glanced once at the horizon. No medals, no applause. Just another day, another choice to carry. Some guardians walked in daylight, names carved into walls. Others stayed in shadow, their work erased by fog. Both mattered. Avery Locke preferred the shadow. If you enjoyed the story, consider sending a super chat to help bring more stories like this. Now, click on the video on the screen to hear another story that's just as powerful and captivating with courage, sacrifice, and a choice that will leave you questioning everything you thought you knew about duty and justice.